The U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin and the U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken have concluded their short visit to India for the 2+2 ministerial dialogue with their Indian counterparts Rajnath Singh and S. Jaishankar. Indian officials say several defense deals are on track, including between the aerospace unit of General Electric and India's Hindustan Aeronautics. There is also speculation that the Pentagon has offered the Stryker family of 8-wheeled armored fighting vehicles to India, as well as several infantry combat vehicle systems. A $3 billion deal for India to buy 31 armed drones made by General Atomics is also being processed. All of this is part of a roadmap between India and the US for expanding their defense industrial cooperation and enhancing interoperability. To talk more about this, I'm now being joined by Ambassador Atul Keshav, who is the President of the US-India Business Council and Senior Vice President South Asia for the US Chamber of Commerce. Ambassador Keshav, thanks very much indeed for joining us on the show. Let me begin by asking you about the 2+2 dialogue. There is such a wide gamut of cooperation that these two sides are looking at now. This relationship has grown leaps and bounds strategically. In defense, in critical energy, in critical minerals, in emerging technology. Talk us through some of the likely deliverables and outcomes from the 2+2.
Well, Bhairavi, thank you very much for having me on. First of all, you've outlined some of the very important deliverables. I was quite interested to see that the U.S. and India have agreed in this 2+2 to upgrade India's participation fully at our joint maritime task force in Bahrain that looks at the Arabian Sea, Persian Gulf, and Indian Ocean. That's a very important piece of news. I was also quite interested to see in the statement that the two governments have indicated that they will finalize the SOSA agreement, which can have a big impact on defense supply chains. You mentioned the Stryker vehicles as well. That's a significant development. But really, I think for me, what's most important is that the United States only has these 2+2 discussions of defense and foreign ministers with our most trusted partners. And the fact that we are now in the 5th year of doing this is indicative of how far we have come between Delhi and Washington and how much trust each side has in each other as we deal with an increasingly complex and unstable world.
Right. And Ambassador Keshav, the Indo-Pacific is an important region for India as it is for America. So while there are obvious distractions in the world at the moment, India wants this to be a significant part of the talks, as mentioned in the opening remarks as well by the Foreign Minister S. Jaishankar this morning. And we are currently looking at a pro-China government in Maldives, instability in Sri Lanka. How are we looking to deepen this relationship further in the Indo-Pacific?
Well, I think the United States and India share a commonality of outlook and concern about developments in the Indo-Pacific. At the end of the day, we want every nation to be sovereign, to be free, to have their own choices, and to make good choices for their people. And we, I think, and I don't speak for my government here, I'm a retiree, but I think we look out and want to ensure that countries are strong, that they have the freedom of choice, that they are prosperous, and that their citizens can lead happy lives. And there are some others in this world that would actually wish to hollow out countries, hollow out their economies, hollow out their national systems, weaken their democracies, and frankly put them toward a purpose that is not good for themselves or for the region. And so there is a great deal of commonality between Delhi and Washington about how we shore up friendly countries all around the region, how we invest in a positive way to strengthen these nascent democracies in some cases, and to ensure their prosperity. So going back all the way to the days of the East Asia dialogue, and then the trilat with Japan, and now the Quad, and of course the 2+2, the ISET technology dialogue, these are all about setting the rules of the road in a way that is good for everyone, not just the United States and India. And it perpetuates the formula for success that has existed since World War II to allow countries to thrive and succeed. And so it's vitally important we continue this work.
Right. In the opening remarks this morning, our Foreign Minister S. Jaishankar also said that India would like to discuss the war in Ukraine and Gaza. Do you sense a global concern over the regional international fallout of these wars, on the global order, on, economic policy going forward? And that is something like partners like India are likely to reiterate going forward.
Bhairavi, India is a $4 trillion economy. It will very soon be a 5, 7, 10, and more trillion dollar economy. It is a world leader. The G20 proves that. And the United States and India are pillars of pluralistic, democratic, prosperous, diverse stability. And therefore, we look to one another as natural partners, natural friends, natural allies in trying to preserve the order that exists and that has been so good for so many countries, including our own. And we look with great worry at these fires that are seemingly raging out of control in more and more places around the world. So we have a natural stake in working with one another. The 2+2 proves that. India's participation in APEC in San Francisco at the invitation of President Biden proves that. The G20 proves that Washington and Delhi increasingly see each other as partners in strengthening and sustaining a world that is looking a little bit shaky.
I do want to speak about the APEC, and President Xi and President Biden will be meeting at the APEC summit. These are two countries on the opposite side of the spectrum on many issues, including, of course, the recent Ukraine war, the Hamas war, the Gaza war. How does America feel about negotiating with China for its influence in the Middle East and on Iran and on other issues, that they don't see any conversions on?
Number one, I think the people of the United States have always been deeply invested in seeing the growth and prosperity of democratic, stable, prosperous nations everywhere. And we will stand up for our interests. It's been clear in Ukraine. It's clear in Israel. We will always look out for our friends. Look at the President of the United States' remarks on Taiwan and other things. And so the U.S. has a very consistent track record of looking out for its interests, looking out for its values, looking out for its friends, and I don't think that's going to change anytime soon.
Right. Now, India is also, as you mentioned, invited to the APEC summit. It's not a member. How do you see this panning out? Will we see India becoming a member as well?
So I love the question because I was the United States envoy for Asia-Pacific economic cooperation in a certain era. And, it was very controversial back then whether or not India would join APEC. And I don't know where that's going. But I would note that of all the countries speaking at the APEC Economic Leaders meeting in San Francisco, the only non-member speaking and invited is India. And that's very, very notable. Of course, we also have the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework that the United States and India are both part of. And so I think there's been a realization in Washington since I was APEC envoy that we have to have India woven into the economic and strategic arrangements of the Indo-Pacific. It can't be the Indo-Pacific without India. And so just in the last year or so, we finally find ourselves in the same strategic and economic baskets, America and India. Strategically in the Quad, economically in the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework. I love the fact that Minister Goyal is going to be in San Francisco. We're hosting him. USIBC is hosting him at an event with Secretary Gina Raimondo. And we are going to have our member companies and the two ministers show the world how much the economic, strategic, and technological convergence between the United States and India is good, not just for both of our countries, but frankly, for all free people everywhere. And I'm delighted Minister Goyal is coming to APEC in San Francisco.
Well, President Biden will also return to India in January for the Quad. What are we looking at? This is a relationship that's not just high on optics, but on steady on growth of economic and defense cooperation, space cooperation, not to forget as well.
So I love all of the topics that you mentioned, Bhairavi, because I feel like all of these things reflect an increasing convergence between the United States and India. We obviously have great relations with Australia and Japan. It is wonderful to see India increasingly added to that mix at a level of quality and a breadth of engagement that rivals our closest allies. We have a commonality of views about the Quad and about the Indo-Pacific. We have shared strategic goals and apprehensions. And most importantly, we have shared values. Our people-to-people relationship between the United States and India is something that very few other countries can boast of. And it is really the glue, the heart, and the soul of what is now becoming a civilizational partnership between the two greatest democracies. And as we look out at potential instability and rising threats, it is good to know that Delhi and Washington are expanding our relationship in all of these various areas. USIBC member companies play a role in all of those areas, and you mentioned a few of them in your introduction. It is a critical element of our engagement that our business communities, American and Indian, are investing in both countries, hiring in both countries, researching in both countries, developing, producing, and helping ensure the prosperity of both of our peoples. Our great companies, American and Indian, are doing a wonderful job for each other, for our citizens, and for the entire world.
Well, there were two significant meetings between Prime Minister Modi and the U.S. President Joe Biden this year in June and September. Talk us through a little bit more about the defense technology cooperation, increasing FDI, and of course the role of Indus-X.
So, Bhairavi, first of all, it's a great moment in U.S.-India relations. I cannot recall a year in which we had two such fantastic interactions between the elected leaders of our free countries. And I think it's great that that momentum continues. Indus-X is very important. You know, we were asked by both governments to launch not only the ISET, the Initiative on Critical and Emerging Technologies, but also Indus-X. The defense element is one area under ISET. And so it's so important that it was built out into Indus-X. And the ISET engagements are critical. They're on things like artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, outer space. But the defense issue is really sort of the blinking red light, where we need to ensure greater production of all of the things that our two great nations need in order to show deterrence toward anybody that would seek to challenge us. Deterrence doesn't mean we're looking for a fight, but deterrence means if the other guy wants to fight, he's going to have a tough time, a really hard time. And democracies need to be powerful in this difficult era. They need to be robust. They need to have secure supply chains. And so co-production of not only the really high-tech, high-technology stuff that the U.S. is so good at, but also things like, you know, armored personnel vehicles and boots and bullets and uniforms and shells is the critical need of the hour. And I'm delighted that under Indus-X, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce and USIBC and our member companies are working to foster the partnerships between Indian and American companies at the mega level and also at smaller levels below that to ensure that production and critically to ensure that deterrence.
Right, and the obvious question then, Ambassador Kashyap, is that has America to a large extent been successfully able to wean India away from Russia as far as defense cooperation is concerned?
So, look, Bhairavi, India is a sovereign country. It will make its own sovereign decisions in its own best interests. I think what American companies offer, and they are partnering very rapidly with the best Indian companies, leading Indian companies, is we offer supremely good technology, an incredible track record of service and support and maintenance and operational effectiveness, world-class tactics, doctrine, research on combat innovations, and then critically transparency. You know, all of our companies are governed by the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act. There is not even a shred of indecency or inappropriate conduct. It is utterly transparent. It is watched very carefully by the United States government. And so I think our companies can absolutely stand by their product because that product will not only be best in world, but it will be absolutely ready for the fight at any moment. And there won't be a shred of indecency or inappropriate conduct with an American company. So these companies are partnering with the leading Indian industrial concerns. And I think they're going to play a big role in helping boost India's national defense and India's deterrence.
Right. My last question to you, Ambassador Kashyap, is that critical technologies, critical minerals, biotechnology, space, these are all extremely important areas of collaboration and cooperation going forward, given, you know, the geopolitical situation, the semiconductors, the critical technology transfer. How much, you know, of a success have we made in these areas between India and the U.S.?
So this is the bright new future. And some technologists might say it's the scary new future. But what the pandemic has taught us is the very powerful lesson that the United States and India truly trust one another. I hear it in senior officials' voices in both countries. I hear it when I go to Japan. I hear it from Australian friends. Trust is the critical ingredient between our democracies. And so as our societies grapple with the deep tech and future tech implications of all of the rapid change in all of the topics you mentioned, particularly artificial intelligence, at the end of the day, we ask ourselves, whom do we trust? And the answer emphatically at the top of the list is India. And India has the skills, the researchers, the willpower, the focus, the determination, and the rising capability for it to be a prime partner for the free people of the United States in developing the rules of the road on all of these technologies of the 21st century. And Bhairavi, if we don't do it, someone else will, and it won't be to our advantage. So we must answer the challenge.
Right, absolutely. Ambassador Atul Keshav, President of the US-India Business Council, thank you very much indeed for joining us this evening and sharing your thoughts.
My pleasure.